A recent photograph uploaded to Facebook has reignited the age-old debate surrounding the existence of Bigfoot. This time, however, the evidence is garnering more attention than usual, partly because of the quality of the image and partly due to the technology used to capture it. Taken with a night vision camera deep in the wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, the photo appears to show a large, bipedal creature walking silently through tall grass under the cover of darkness. Within hours of being posted, the image had spread like wildfire, shared thousands of times across social media platforms, and especially among groups dedicated to the investigation of mysterious creatures. For many within the Bigfoot research community, this could be one of the most compelling pieces of visual evidence captured to date. The Pacific Northwest has long been considered a prime habitat for Sasquatch, the legendary creature said to roam the dense forests and remote wilderness areas of the region. Sightings and encounters have been reported for decades, passed down from generation to generation, and often rooted in indigenous traditions that speak of a forest-dwelling giant. What makes this particular image remarkable is not just its setting, but the clarity and composition of the figure. The night vision camera has provided a high-contrast image that allows viewers to clearly distinguish the outline and movement of the creature, giving an eerie green hue to the towering shape. In the photograph, the creature is mid-stride, its posture upright, with massive arms swinging forward in motion. Researchers and enthusiasts have pointed out that one of the key giveaways in debunking Bigfoot hoaxes is the proportion of the limbs, particularly the arms. A human in a costume, no matter how elaborate, typically cannot replicate the long arm-to-leg ratio that has become a hallmark of consistent Bigfoot descriptions. In this case, the figure's arms extend well below the hip, and the bulk of the body suggests immense muscle mass. The stride itself also appears too wide and natural for someone in a suit to mimic, without mechanical assistance or serious discomfort. These anatomical features support the theory that the figure in the image is not a costumed hoax, but a real, living creature. Some in the Bigfoot research community have gone so far as to suggest that the creature in the photograph may be a juvenile. Its slightly less robust frame, combined with more narrow shoulders, has led to comparisons with reported sightings of smaller Sasquatch-like beings, sometimes referred to as juvenile Bigfoot or even juvenile skunk apes in the southeastern United States. These younger creatures are rarely documented, and if this is one, it adds another layer of significance to the photograph. Not only would this mean that Bigfoot exists, but that they reproduce, form familial units, and perhaps even travel in groups that include young. Another striking aspect of this sighting is the time of day. The image was captured at night, suggesting that these creatures may be primarily nocturnal. This would help explain why most credible sightings occur at dusk or dawn, and why daytime encounters remain rare despite decades of searching. The cover of darkness not only offers safety from human interference, but also allows these creatures to move freely in a world increasingly dominated by people. The night vision image strips away the camouflage of shadows and forest depth, offering a glimpse into a world that typically evades human detection. This sighting has also sparked discussions about the future of Bigfoot research. For years, investigators have used trail cams, plaster casts, and anecdotal evidence, but this image is a compelling argument for investing in more advanced technology. Night vision and thermal imaging could revolutionize how researchers explore vast wilderness areas. Traditional trail cameras often fail to capture clear images due to poor lighting, movement blur, or being triggered by small animals. In contrast, night vision and infrared cameras can bypass these limitations, focusing solely on movement and heat signatures that stand out against the colder environment. Some experts are calling for the use of drones equipped with thermal imaging to cover wider swathes of terrain. Drones offer a unique advantage by allowing researchers to reach remote or dangerous areas without disturbing the environment. They can fly above the canopy, capture footage from angles previously unattainable, and sweep across miles of terrain in minutes. Used in tandem with ground-based night vision cameras, drones could help establish patterns, track movements, and potentially lead to the first undisputed proof of Bigfoot's existence. Critics will, of course, continue to raise questions. Skeptics often point to hoaxes, misidentifications, or wishful thinking as explanations for such photos, but what makes this particular sighting difficult to dismiss is the sheer consistency of the anatomical details with what is already known from decades of sightings. The long arms, the height, the stride, and the context all align with what seasoned researchers have documented. Furthermore, the lack of clear incentive, no financial gain, no media appearances, just a post to a Facebook group, adds a layer of authenticity to the situation. The individual who uploaded the photo has remained anonymous, perhaps to avoid the scrutiny or ridicule that often accompanies such claims. However, their willingness to share the image freely with the Bigfoot research community has allowed for broader analysis and discussion. Multiple photo experts and analysts are already reviewing the image for signs of manipulation, but so far, no conclusive evidence of tampering has been presented. It appears that what was captured that night was not staged, but a fleeting moment of something genuinely unexplained. In the end, whether or not the figure in the image is ever conclusively identified as Bigfoot, the photograph has had a significant impact. It has reignited a passionate discussion within the community, inspired new methods of investigation, and reminded many of the allure and mystery that still clings to the forests of North America. The image serves as a modern-day artifact of a legend that refuses to fade, continuing to blur the line between myth and reality. It has reminded us that even in an age dominated by technology and information, the world still holds secrets, some of which might be walking quietly through the tall grass in the dead of night, just out of reach. Until now. As more people begin to use accessible technologies like night vision equipment and thermal drones, it's likely that more compelling evidence will surface. Whether this will finally lead to a full understanding of Bigfoot remains to be seen, but what is certain is that the conversation is far from over. Newly released photograph of Bigfoot hiding behind a tree. A recent photograph shared by a respected Bigfoot expert has stirred renewed excitement and debate within the Bigfoot community. The image, taken in a densely wooded area somewhere in the United States, appears to show a massive, upright creature hiding behind a tree. According to the expert who released the image, the figure stands at an estimated height of over 8 feet tall and possesses features consistent with decades of eyewitness accounts describing Bigfoot: broad shoulders, dark hair, and elongated limbs. The clarity of the photograph and its natural setting have led many to call it one of the best and most convincing pieces of photographic evidence in recent years. The expert, who has spent decades researching alleged Bigfoot sightings and collecting evidence, emphasized that the photograph has not been digitally altered in any way. Anticipating skepticism, he acknowledged that some viewers might initially dismiss the figure as a tree stump or a patch of moss. However, he encouraged closer inspection, noting the humanoid shape, the defined structure of the head and shoulders, and the posture of something clearly attempting to remain concealed. Bigfoot experts have said that you can see the outline, and it's far too tall and symmetrical to be anything but a living creature. The photograph quickly made the rounds online, being shared across social media, discussion forums, and within Bigfoot research groups. Many praised the image for its quality and composition. Unlike the often blurry and distant photos that usually accompany Bigfoot reports, this image is remarkably crisp and well-framed. It captures a moment where the creature appears to be partially exposed, yet still trying to hide, a rare and compelling instance that seems to validate stories that have persisted for generations. Viewers have commented that this is the type of image the Bigfoot field desperately needs. With so many alleged photos and videos previously dismissed due to poor resolution or suspicious editing, this unaltered image stands out as a potentially groundbreaking piece of evidence. It suggests that the advancement of photographic technology, particularly high-resolution trail cams and mobile devices with advanced zoom capabilities, may finally be bridging the gap between folklore and proof. The expert who released the photograph believes that as technology continues to improve, more clear images will follow. With better cameras, drones, night vision equipment, and motion detection cameras, researchers are now able to monitor remote locations more effectively than ever before. This could mark the beginning of a new era in Bigfoot research, one that moves from anecdotal evidence and ambiguous footprints to tangible visual documentation. For believers, this image reaffirms their conviction that something unexplained still roams the forests of North America. The Rocky Mountains Bigfoot photo. The Rocky Mountains Bigfoot Group, a well-known organization dedicated to the study and investigation of Sasquatch sightings in North America, has long held a reputation for sharing intriguing pieces of evidence. One of their most compelling contributions to the field remains a photograph they posted over a decade ago. Despite its age, the image continues to spark discussion and debate among Bigfoot researchers and enthusiasts. The photograph, taken deep in a dense forest within the Rocky Mountain range, appears to show a Bigfoot crouching low to the ground, partially hidden by foliage. What makes the image especially fascinating is the posture and apparent behavior of the creature, which many suggest is attempting to remain concealed from the person who captured the moment. Unlike many blurry or ambiguous Bigfoot photos, this one provides enough detail to make out the general shape and proportions of the creature. The figure's arms are notably long, longer than would be anatomically possible for an average human. This detail alone has been cited repeatedly by the group and other experts as a key factor, suggesting the figure is not a person in a costume. According to the Rocky Mountains Bigfoot group, the unusual limb proportions, combined with the natural and relaxed crouching pose, point to a biological entity rather than a fabricated hoax. There has also been considerable speculation about the creature's age. The group proposed that the Bigfoot in the photo could be a juvenile. This theory is supported by the creature's somewhat smaller frame in comparison to the typical descriptions of massive, towering adult Bigfoot sightings. If true, the photograph would be even more significant, as images of juvenile Bigfoot are extremely rare. The potential presence of younger individuals in the wild would also imply the existence of a breeding population, further evidence that Bigfoot may be more than just legend. The behavior shown in the image also adds to its authenticity. Rather than being caught in a dramatic pose or moving aggressively, the figure is still, low to the ground, and seemingly alert. This subtlety adds a level of realism that is often missing in staged photos or hoaxes. The creature appears aware of the photographer's presence, but remains motionless, perhaps instinctively hiding to avoid detection. This behavior aligns with many eyewitness accounts that describe Bigfoot as elusive and extremely cautious around humans. Though the photograph is now over 10 years old, it remains one of the most compelling and frequently referenced images in the Bigfoot community. It is regularly shared during conferences, online discussions, and documentaries as a strong example of photographic evidence. Bigfoot researchers continue to stand by the photo, citing it as one of the best representations of the creature captured in the wild. Mysterious creature photographed in the 1970s. One of the most intriguing and enduring pieces of alleged Bigfoot evidence emerged from the remote wilderness of Bowron Lake in central British Columbia, Canada, during the mid-1970s. The photograph, reportedly taken by a pair of fishermen, appears to show a large, dark, bipedal figure emerging from the lake's still waters. To this day, the image remains a focal point of fascination for researchers and Bigfoot enthusiasts alike, often cited as one of the most compelling visual records of the elusive creature. Set against the dense, forested backdrop of British Columbia's vast wilderness, the photograph has sparked debates, theories, and renewed interest in the possibility that something unknown continues to roam the region. During the 1970s, British Columbia experienced a wave of Bigfoot sightings. Eyewitnesses from various areas of the province reported encounters with large, hairy humanoid beings in the forests, valleys, and mountainous regions. Many of these reports described creatures standing well over 6 feet tall, with long arms, massive footprints, and an uncanny ability to vanish into the dense brush without a trace. Bowron Lake, known for its natural beauty and remote location, was and still is a place frequented by outdoorsmen, making it a prime setting for unexplained events. The photo in question shows a tall, shadowy figure mid-step as it exits the lake, with ripples of water surrounding it. The size and posture of the figure immediately suggests something far larger than a human, and its proportions do not align with someone in a suit. While some have argued the image could be a hoax, perhaps involving a costumed individual, many who have studied the photo closely argue that it would have been extremely difficult to stage such an image convincingly, especially with 1970s camera equipment and in a remote wilderness setting without attracting attention. Bigfoot researchers have long noted the creature's supposed connection to bodies of water. It's been suggested that these animals, if they exist, may rely on rivers and lakes for drinking water, bathing, or even food sources like fish and aquatic plants. The Bowron Lake photograph supports this theory, and its setting has prompted some investigators to advocate for the strategic placement of trail cameras near similar bodies of water. According to this line of thought, water's necessity for life and the natural isolation of many lakes and streams could make them ideal locations for future sightings or encounters. Whether the Boron Lake photo is definitive proof of Bigfoot's existence remains unknown, but its legacy endures. For believers, it is a tantalizing glimpse into a mystery that refuses to be solved. Interestingly, as many Bigfoot researchers have pointed out, the legend of Bigfoot in Washington dates back long before European settlers arrived. Native American tribes in the Pacific Northwest, such as the Salish, Yakama, and Lummi, have passed down stories of a large, hairy, human-like creature that lived in the forested mountains. Known by various names, including Sasquatch, these creatures were often described as benevolent yet powerful beings, respected and feared by the tribes. The legends told of these beings as guardians of the forest, sometimes interacting with humans, but mostly keeping their distance. The first modern reports of Bigfoot sightings in Washington began in the 19th century, as settlers moved into the region. One of the earliest recorded sightings occurred in 1884, when a group of settlers near the Cascade Mountains claimed to have seen a large, ape-like creature. Descriptions of the creature were consistent with what we now recognize as Bigfoot: tall, covered in hair, and walking upright on two legs. Throughout the 20th century, reports of Bigfoot sightings in Washington continued to surface, with many accounts coming from the remote areas of the state, particularly around the Olympic Peninsula, Mount St. Helens, and the Cascade Range. These sightings often described the creature as being between 6 and 10 feet tall, with dark fur, large feet, and a distinct, powerful odor. Eyewitnesses frequently reported seeing the creature at a distance, often during twilight or nighttime when visibility was poor. One of the most famous Bigfoot encounters in Washington occurred in 1969 near the town of Colville, in the northeastern part of the state. A group of loggers reported a series of strange occurrences, including sightings of a large, hairy creature and the discovery of enormous footprints in the mud around their logging camp. The loggers, who were experienced outdoorsmen, were convinced that they had encountered something extraordinary. Their reports drew the attention of Bigfoot researchers and enthusiasts, sparking renewed interest in the creature. Another notable incident took place in 1971 at Mount St. Helens, where a group of campers reported seeing a creature that fit the description of Bigfoot. The campers described the creature as being about 7 feet tall, covered in dark hair, and walking upright. They claimed that the creature approached their campsite, sniffed around, and then disappeared into the woods. The incident was widely reported in the local media, adding to the growing body of Bigfoot sightings in Washington. In recent years, sightings of Bigfoot in Washington have continued to be reported. In 2000, a motorist driving along Highway 20 near the town of Winthrop claimed to have seen a large, dark figure standing by the side of the road. The driver described the figure as being around 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders and long arms. The sighting was investigated by Bigfoot researchers, who found large footprints in the area, further fueling speculation that the creature might be real. Located on the border of the state of Florida and Georgia is a 438,000-acre swampland that stretches across the state borders and houses a wide variety of undiscovered animal and insect species. This peat-filled wetland, referred to as the Okefenokee Swamp, has been at the center of several encounters with the skunk ape creature and is often believed to be the last unexplored refuge of the creatures in the modern day. Even more interesting, the name Okefenokee is a native Creek Indian word that roughly translates to mean the land of the trembling earth and seems to reference a massive creature that's known for shaking the earth as it walks. The oldest known skunk ape encounter to have occurred within the Okefenokee Swamp was reported back during the winter of 1828. According to the report made by 2 eyewitnesses, both of which were amateur hunters who were looking to explore the surrounding area, the 2 men came across what they referred to as a giant. Originally, their expedition began as a short hunting party, but rather than turn back at the height of their excitement, the 2 men's trip continued for another several weeks as they traveled deeper into the swamp, recording brief encounters with bears, panthers, alligators, and overgrown snakes. Roughly 3 weeks into their hunting trip, the men claimed to have heard the sound of loud screaming. However, the screams sounded much deeper and louder than a man could naturally produce. As they glanced around the woods surrounding their camp to investigate the source of the noise, the men then heard what they described as the sound of heavy stomping, as if a large creature was running through the woods surrounding their camp. Unsure of whether or not the creature was a large wild animal or a distressed man, the two hunters decided to light a fire and stay within the proximity of their makeshift camp until daylight, as the day was soon ending and darkness was fast approaching. Despite the roaring fire to help keep the nearby woods illuminated, the men complained that they were unable to sleep due to the strange sounds they continued to hear, despite no creature being visible anywhere near their location. Additionally, it became necessary to gather nearby scraps of wood to keep the fire burning, and so the men were forced to venture slightly more and more into the surrounding darkness to maintain their light source. By the next morning, the men investigated the nearby woods and wetlands, hoping to find any evidence of a creature having prowled their camp the night prior. After a few hours of looking, the men claimed that they came across several barefoot, human-looking footprints that would have been impossible for any normal person to have made. Mostly due to the fact that the footprints were all spaced roughly 6 feet apart and were an estimated 18 inches in length. Worried that the creature might return, the hunters immediately fled the swamp and returned to town. Oddly enough, the story of the encounter with the unknown swamp giant does not end there. Once the two hunters returned to the closest town, they told the nearby townspeople of what they had encountered and warned them that a monster might soon attack the town. Fearful of the beast, the town gathered together a hunting party of 9 men to hunt down the beast and kill it before it could attack the town. Gathered together, the men went into the swamp and traveled as far down as its southernmost part, now located in the state of Florida. After several days of searching the area, the men located sets of footprints far too large for any normal man to have created and used the footprints as a trail guiding them directly to the giant. As the men began following the footprints, they noticed that they were often spaced increasingly further apart, sometimes disappearing completely and reappearing elsewhere in the swamps, as if the creature climbed and jumped between trees for traveling. Before long, the trail was completely lost, and the 9 men decided to make camp for the night and begin their search again at daybreak. Unfortunately for the band of men, during the night, the creature would invade the camp and attack the hunters in a fit of rage. According to the 9 witnesses, a massive humanoid creature covered in hair all over its body suddenly ran straight through the camp, toppling over several tents and began tearing apart the equipment and supplies of the traveling men. Fearing for their lives, the men grabbed their guns and fired at the creature, causing the giant to retaliate by overpowering the men and ripping the heads off of 5 members of the party, tossing their limp bodies several feet as if they weighed next to nothing. The remaining 4 members continued firing at the creature, sending several rounds of bullets through its chest before the creature fell down in a low grumble and passed away shortly after. After closer examination of the giant's body, the men estimated the humanoid creature to have been slightly over 13 feet in height and appeared to look exactly like a man with the exception of its tremendous size and full body covering of hair. While observing the body, however, the men continued to hear the sound of screaming in the surrounding woods, similar to what the 2 hunters had experienced on their journey several days prior. Believing that the screaming could be coming from a dozen more of the giant creatures, the men packed up their equipment and began moving out of the swamp during the night, unable to wait until morning out of fear that a retaliatory attack would take place if they continued to stay. Once the 4 men returned to the nearest town, they told the townspeople what happened to the 5 other men who were attacked and that they estimated that a dozen more of the giant creatures were still out there in the nearby swamps. Fearing that an attack would eventually reach the town, the men began traveling throughout the area and warning people of an impending attack from giants. On the 1st of January 1829, a local reporter that wrote for the Georgia newspaper Statesman would interview the men and retell their story for local publishing. By February of that year, less than 30 days after the original publication, reprintings of the story spread to neighboring communities and would see a February issue published in the Connecticut newspaper, The Sentinel, warning traveling parties to stay clear of the Okefenokee swamp. Although continued sightings would be made of the giant humanoid creatures in the surrounding areas, later referred to as skunk apes, no violent attack was made over the following years. After a few decades, the sensationalism of the story eventually died down, and became nothing more than a local legend. To this day, travelers are still warned of the Okefenokee swamp giants when traveling through the region.